All right, so let's talk about what's going on with Trump because there's more than meets the eye. There are people that are talking about the legal implications and what's going on at face value. But as you know, on this channel, I talk a lot about the deeper things and some of the military operation as well as what it's doing at face, not only face value, but for the people that are trying to wake up and others that are holding people into this truth sort of journey that people are on. And so one of the things that you've got to understand is that there's two sort of perspectives that you can look at this, the deep perspective and the superficial perspective. If you're looking at this from a superficial perspective, then just like what the media is saying, you are seeing Donald Trump as being a quote unquote convicted felon with 34 counts that he was found guilty of. And you're going to read that headline and you're going to think, okay, I guess he's a bad guy, and you're just going to walk away not really understanding the situation and the scenario, because even Jesus, being perfect, he was found guilty, right? You had Joseph thrown into jail in prison for 2 years. You had Daniel thrown in the lion's den. You had Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. You had Haman trying to set up this noose for Mordecai. You had all kinds of things for which people were falsely accused. And God, he knew the situation and what was going on and the depth behind it. And so you have to look at not only the superficial, but the depth, because the superficial is igniting a certain response, right? People that are, coming out of the woodwork, donating to his campaign, supporting him, and seeing that this is wrong, this is not good, he's being persecuted, political target, and all this stuff. And then you got other people on the left, or just whoever doesn't like Trump, saying that, aha, got you, like you deserve it, and laughing it off and all that stuff. And so I'm going to look at it from not only the superficial, but the deep. And so the one thing you have to understand about the deep is you have to look at the case, right? So one of the things that people are talking about is how, quote unquote, unjustified this was. And even a CNN legal analyst, this guy who was Alvin Bragg's former colleague, came out and said this is a rigged Trump case, accusing Judge Juan Merchan of violating the law. And even this guy, Eli Honig, who is a senior or one of the CNN's legal analysts, said that this trial blew his mind because the judge donated money, a tiny amount of $35, but in plain violation of a rule prohibiting New York judges from making political donations of any kind to a pro-Biden, anti-Trump political operation. So right away, you know that this judge was already biased against Trump, a Trump-hating, pro-Biden supporting judge. And then the charges against Trump are obscure and nearly, and it says, I'm quoting him, nearly entirely unprecedented, meaning that no state prosecutor has ever charged federal elections law as a direct or predicate state crime against anyone for anything. And so if you look at the details of all the 34 counts, it's very obvious when you look at it from a legal precedent that they're just trying to go after him, right? And he continues saying, quote, none ever, even putting aside specifics of election law, the Manhattan DA itself almost never brings any case in which falsification of business records is the only charge, right? And even that, falsification of business records, we can talk about what that quote unquote means, going back to even the real estate, sizing up the cost of his real estate and what was charged there. And quote, the charges against Trump aren't just unusual, they're bespoke, seemingly crafted individually for the former president and nobody else, right? So this is a Frankenstein case, as he says, and many others are chiming in on this, because if you look at the detail, then you would realize that this is a hit piece, right? Going after him because they can't stop him. And so this is where a lot of people are waking up, and the normal person who, whether you are a convicted felon in the sense that you are of maybe a minority or in a community for which justice was done to you unfairly, they're realizing and they're empathizing with Trump and saying, this is the same that's happening to us and to our community. And they're rising up, supporting him, and even donating. I think in the last few days, he's raised hundreds of millions of dollars in donations. And even him going on TikTok. Recently, he was on TikTok. He's right now at, I think, 5.3 million followers, people commenting on his first video here that he posted, talking about the injustice and just many other things. So far, you see 82 million views on his first TikTok, 5.3 million followers. And again, it's not about numbers. It's showing the overwhelming support that is for Trump, because after this, you had people, I think even on the Democratic side, saying, hey, maybe this is a mistake. Maybe we should do something about this to pardon and just various things. And I believe the sentencing is set for July 11th. And reading some commentary from people, right? This person, Rob, says sentencing 4 days before the RNC convention to nominate Trump. This is all good news for the world and America because number one, Trump presidential victory is sealed. Number two, precedent now set for Bush, Clinton, and Obama arrests. Number three, overturn and appeal guaranteed. And number four, top to bottom DOJ corruption exposed. And we can go on and on about this, but there are a lot of things that are being set as a precedent. John Galt explains that all of these things that have happened to Trump so far is setting the tone for other presidents, right? So going after, like the previous post mentioned, Clinton, Obama, and Biden, these guys, right? Because it was done to Trump first, right? Then it can be now, in some sense, digestible, palpable for the rest of the population because it would have looked like civil war. It would have looked like some hit job if Trump, in some sense, didn't take the hit and the arrows first. And so, number one, presidents and former presidents can be impeached. And I'm not going to reread that, but can be forced to reveal tax and business records, can lose executive privilege, can lose attorney-client privilege, can be forced to release private phone records and text messages, can have their homes raided by the FBI, can be subpoenaed by partisan committees, can be repeatedly indicted and arrested, lose their First Amendment right to free speech, lose the right to a jury trial, and the list goes on, right? And so this is basically setting the tone in some sense such that, okay, the left, these guys have nothing to say because they, quote unquote, did it to Trump first. And so you got to ask yourself, why is he doing this, right? This post, Q post 153 says, for the coming days ahead, ask yourself an honest question. Why would a billionaire who has it all, fame, fortune, and a warm, loving family, friends, want to endanger himself and his family by becoming POTUS? Why would he want to target himself and those he cares about? Does he need money? Does he need fame? What does he get out of this? Does he want to make the US, the world, a better place for his family and for those good and decent people who have long been taken advantage of? Perhaps he could not stomach the thought of mass murders occurring to satisfy Moloch, right? And again, this is all sounds like conspiracy, like, oh, the child sacrifice, the pedophilia, all that stuff. Maybe, and continuing on, perhaps he could not stomach the thought of children being kidnapped, drugged, raped, while leaders and law enforcement of the world turn a blind eye. So, and again, you can read the rest of this. This is post 153, but it's asking a rational question. Why would he go through all of this? Why would a billionaire go through this whole process, right? He has everything. He could have just retired and done his thing, but he has a bigger vision. He wants to stand for righteous things because, again, if you are awake and you understand the elite will go against the people that are fighting them, especially this man, Trump. The last 6, 7, 8 years, we've seen the same persecution, the same impeachment, the same stuff, the media bashing him. And if you're not awake by now and to understand that this person is not part of the establishment, and everybody that's awake, you would realize that there is a populist sort of movement, the rich versus the poor, or the elite versus all of us, the normal people. And this is what Trump is fighting for, the people's people, right? And that's why his poll numbers, the surveys, however you want to see this, the TikTok, he is gaining in popularity because more and more people are seeing through this and realizing this persecution. And if you recognize the biblical stories and if you recognize spiritual battle, then you would know that everything you see at the superficial level is not what it appears to be. I've always said this before. Don't just take headlines. Don't take news. Don't look at somebody and saying that, oh, he's just a convicted felon, or now we can laugh at him. Now he's done for. All that stuff. The same happened with Jesus. If you sat there, I always say this, if you sat there in the time of Jesus and you looked up at him on the cross and you said, this guy, he must have been a false prophet because he's obviously up there on the cross for a reason. If you heard all the Pharisees, all the people whispering in your ear, crucify him, and you were just a pawn, a peon in the group, and you didn't have discernment, you would go along with them and you would say, yeah, why don't we crucify this false Messiah, not knowing that literally you're seeing Christ himself as the Messiah. So what I'm saying is nobody's worshiping Trump. Nobody's comparing him to Christ. What you've got to have is discernment to see not only the spiritual, the superficial, but also the depth behind it. Because what is it that they're trying to do? They're trying to get him to have this label, convicted felon, and whatever legal means to stop him from being elected. And so everybody that's awake now over the last few years can see that. It's been persecution after persecution. And what is it that he's going to do? So let me show you a couple of clips. This guy talks about some clues. Again, he's been giving clues about what's happening. And one of the things that he says that he has to do is he has to take the slings and the arrows because it has to set itself up as a trap for other people. So let's take a look quickly at this video. And this person does a good job looking at two clues and how he says it overtly in a post interview video that he has up from after the trial.
Okay, on Eye of the Storm, we've been talking about that POTUS is most likely going to be found guilty, but all things kind of work out at the end. There's always a reason. And I think POTUS gave us a couple hints. That's exactly where all this is going, okay? So let's take a listen. He says two things. He says 1,000 times worse, and he says history books, okay?
Because I'm a gay code. Far worse than that, by 1,000 times worse than that. The worst I've ever heard, but I can't talk about it. It'll be talked about, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. But it'll be talked about in the history books.
Boom. Okay, so what am I talking about? Well, on Eye of the Storm, we've been talking about now comes the pain, and there's that symbol that Q uses for that, and that's in Q 4686. And there's the connection about the 1,000 times that POTUS referenced. But here's what I'm talking about with the case. Equal justice under the law as written. Okay. Is that what's going on with Trump? Or are we seeing something a little bit different there? Okay. But here's the bigger connection. Okay. This goes back to when Donald Trump was impeached back in December of 2019. This was Q 3728, and people were really down emotionally when POTUS got impeached, okay? And Anand had written to the board and said, thanks for standing watch with us for a little while on this emotional night. We are with you, and POTUS, please pass that on to him. And Q replied back to this Anand for a little comfort and a little further explanation, okay? Hey, friend, patriot, hold your head up high. Really important here. POTUS was not harmed in any way today other than on paper history books. Okay? So think about Trump being found guilty on paper. Is he really going to be harmed? Can he take care of it with an appeal? Those types of things. Okay? And what is Trump really doing? And he's been saying it. Sometimes you must sacrifice yourself for the greater good. That's exactly what he's doing. Look at the next note. He's been saying it on his rallies. I will gladly take all these slings and arrows for you, POTUS. That's what he's doing. Even that can be undone, like I was saying, on an appeal. And here's where it ties into that mass pop awakening cue to start all this. The enormity of what's coming will shock the world. Pray, Q. Okay? Boom.
Remember, POTUS is insulated. He's talking about the history books. He's talking about what will come for what's 1,000 times worse. And for all these other guys, George Soros, whoever else. And he's mentioned this. A lot of drops are mentioned talking about these things in recent days. And more is coming. So again, the next month is going to be crazy. Going into the summer, it's going to be even worse. And to those that are buckled up, get ready because the ride is going to be absolutely crazy. Because God, if he is using somebody, it doesn't matter. The perspective, it doesn't matter. And again, this is encouragement for all of you out there fighting for justice, for righteousness, for your own church or whatever it is that you're doing. If people are smearing you, if people are looking at you in the wrong way, even if you have a tarnished resume, even if you have a conviction, a legal thing, whatever it is, convicted felon, whatever it is, as long as God is with you, then that is all that matters. Because these guys in the Bible, they all went through similar things. They were convicted, they were found guilty, they were put in jail, they were even crucified. It cost them their life. And so this, for many of you going into the end times, this is what it will be. You cannot have roses and rainbows type of interpretation to how God is using people, because they will be persecuted, they will be smeared, they're not going to look good on paper. God will protect them, but you have to realize going into the end times, your pastors, your favorite influencers, your favorite celebrities, your favorite whoever it is that is doing kingdom work, they're not going to have a perfect, polished resume. And so this is where you have to break this idea. If Jesus was here today, he would have been smeared. Literally, his social media page, the news media, whoever it is, they would have smeared him to the ground, and people would have a bad impression of him. And so this is what's going on with anybody that's doing kingdom work and fighting for righteousness. You're going to have this kind of battle. And thank goodness people are recognizing it. They're waking up and they're seeing what's going on. So love you guys. Be encouraged. If you're fighting, continue the good fight, because we need it going into this next year. Love you guys. Talk to you guys very soon.